Welcome back to Talk of the Town on 99.7, 1450 WHTC and WHTC.com.
And we welcome you back to Talk of the Town for this Wednesday, September the 2nd. I'm Gary Stevens. We'll be open line following the 11 o'clock news, but we are joined monthly for an update on what goes on at the old Hayworth seating plant in Allegan. That is, of course, now the home of the Allegan County Correctional Facility, as well as the Allegan County Sheriff's Department. And Sheriff Frank Baker is on the other side of our Zoom connection joining us this morning. Frank, good morning and welcome back to Talk of the Town.
Good morning, Gary.
Glad you are with us. And if you have a question for Sheriff Frank Baker, or he'll be joined by Lieutenant Jim Miller in a few moments, they'll be happy to take it at 395-1450, 395-1450. Before we talk about the jail, how it's handling COVID-19, we do need to talk about the latest incident involving the police and the public, Kenosha, Wisconsin. I chatted a little bit with Steve Kempker, the Ottawa County Sheriff, on this last Friday. I'll bring it up with you as well. You know, these incidents do come up, and the hue and cry comes up about police brutality. I heard that too often during the 1960s and 70s in Detroit. But it just makes your job, and I'm saying you in all law enforcement, Frank, just that much tougher.
Yeah, it sure does, Gary. I mean, obviously these incidences, there's a spotlight on them, and that spotlight has a tendency to shine very far. Not just that incident, but it looks at all of law enforcement, and as a result of that, we're kind of all getting kind of caught up in that. But fortunately, we live in a community that we're very blessed that they support us, and you know, we do what we can to make sure that we have that trust and that support. We try to be as transparent as we can. We try to be, you know, a reflection of our community and a part of our community, so that that trust is there. Obviously, that helps us do our job. I think it helps us be successful. And it's one of the reasons why I think Allegan County is a great place to live and raise a family.
I will mention this, you know, all of the discussions about what happened to Jacob Blake in Kenosha. More information is being found out about Mr. Blake and the situation there. But on the national media, this has been sort of overlooked in this particular situation. Over the weekend, a St. Louis police officer is dead after being shot in the line of duty over the weekend. Tamaris Bohannon and a second officer were shot while responding to a shooting call in the Tower Grove South neighborhood. That was over the weekend. A man now has been charged in the shooting death, Thomas Kenworthy Jr., and the funeral arrangements are set for Tamaris Bohannon on Sunday afternoon. It does happen. You know,
yeah, it does. Yeah, I mean, it is a dangerous profession. You know, the difference is obviously there's professions out there that are very dangerous. You know, people that work construction jobs and everything else. And the difference is typically when an officer is injured or hurt, it's by someone who's intending to hurt them. It's an intentional act, and that makes it kind of a real challenge to deal with. I know our officers do feel that stress. But, you know, it's one of those things where I've heard it said before, and in the media, there's nobody that hates a bad cop more than a good cop. And when these incidences like that have happened kind of across the United States that are being highlighted now, you know, any incident is one too many. And it makes all of our jobs in law enforcement that much tougher because, you know, we all get in this for the same reason. That's because we want to help people. And it's not because we want to help certain people. It's we want to help people. And it's unfortunate that everybody kind of gets caught up in this and we get lumped together. But hopefully we'll be able to work through that on a national level and kind of get things back to, I guess, what we would consider as normal. And we can work with our communities so that they can be better and stronger and a better reflection of what we want to be as a society.
Oh, look, sorry, there. Get the button on. We do have Peg McNichol in the WHTC newsroom. She has a question for you, Frank.
I'm waving at you, but we can't see each other. So here's my question. I know when someone needs to be taken into custody, there are a number of steps. When I was in Missouri, I wrote a lot about this because I did some use of force cases down there 10 years ago. there are like 10 steps. Can you just very briefly go over what those are, where you have to escalate the use of force when taking someone into custody? I mean, it starts out with a conversation, right?
Well, it's kind of a complicated topic, and probably one that we won't be able to get through today. We used to call it a force continuum. And basically the level of force, just the mere presence of you on scene, is a level of force, because you are there, you're wearing a uniform, you represent law enforcement. And these steps can either they can go from 0 to 60 in a quick amount of time, depending upon the way the other person is acting. But I guess given like the perfect scenario, Peg, yeah, you would be, the first level of force is just you arriving in uniform. And then, yeah, it would begin with a conversation. And, it would begin with a conversation of ask. We used to kind of call it ask, tell, take. And, you're trying to get a level of compliance in the way that you can use the least amount of force as necessary. But unfortunately, obviously, situations do arise where that level of force does have to grow. And then, we're using what we call, soft, empty hand controls, just, the mere grabbing a hold of somebody. And then we would have to escalate to a more, what we call a hard, empty hand control. And then obviously we have other different means that we consider as less lethal. We don't carry pepper gas anymore because we carry tasers, but we used to have pepper gas. We now deploy tasers to our officers. We think that that's been a great improvement because it's not an impact weapon. So, even though the taser is something that does create pain, when that few seconds is over, the pain is over. There isn't a lasting injury like you see when you're having to use batons or even when you're using pepper gas that's going to require, flushing out the eyes and that. But that level of force kind of grows. But if presented with something that is, you need a level of force greater than, then that's when we sometimes end up with situations that can involve shootings and that. So yeah, it's something that's a concept that we train a lot on, because of the fact that it's something that's kind of a moving target depending upon the reaction of the person that you're trying to apprehend.
Let us move forward to another, let's just say a big topic that all in law enforcement have to deal with, and that is COVID-19. And part of what your office and other sheriff's office has to deal with is the outbreak and handling of prisoners along those lines. And you have Lieutenant Jim Miller with you today, Frank, so I'll defer to you or to Lieutenant Miller about the situation, how the Allegan County Sheriff's Department is handling inmates in the situation involving COVID-19.
Yeah, Gary, I know everyone's obviously familiar mostly with our law enforcement deputies. They're the ones that they see out on patrol. And obviously we had to come up with plans and procedures to protect them and to protect the public. But one of the things that people don't see necessarily is what steps we're taking to protect our staff that's working within the correctional center, as well as the inmates that we are charged with their care. So it's a big responsibility, and something that I thought listeners might be interested in knowing, kind of the steps that we're taking, so that if there's someone who has a friend or family member that ends up incarcerated, that they can know that we are taking the steps necessary to protect that individual and also obviously protect our staff. But I do have Lieutenant Jim Miller with me, and he can talk a little bit about kind of the stuff we're doing and some of the steps we're taking since the advent of this pandemic to protect the individuals here at the Correction Center.
So while Frank Baker gets the Zoom camera moved over to Lieutenant Miller to join us here on 99.7 and 1450 WHTC, we now are joined by Lieutenant Jim Miller. And this, when it first hit us, Jim, right off the bat in March, it's almost as if new protocols had to be brought up, like 10 minutes ago. You guys had to really be ready almost from the get-go on this thing.
Yeah, it was a challenge right up front. We went, like the sheriff said a minute ago about the use of force, we went from 0 to 100 in a short amount of time. The first thing we did was contact the courts and let them know that we were seeing some challenges and wanted to do a population reduction. They were very helpful in reducing the, the number of inmates we had in custody to only those that needed to be here or were a threat to public safety. Internally, we started testing people as they walked in the door. So we just took their temperature and asked them a series of questions about exposure and travel. And then if they had a positive answer to any of that, we would keep them separate from other inmates. And if they were going to be here for any length of time, we offered them testing for COVID. Back in May, we did a mass testing within the facility that tested both staff and inmates. This was provided by the state. And we were happy to say that nobody came back positive. At one time, we did have a staff member test positive, but they're back to work and healthy now too. Continuing through up until today, we have regular sanitation of inside the facility. We have staff having their temperature taken every time they enter and leave the facility. We have inmates that are going through a process of sanitation so that we can make sure that the inmates in the housing units don't have the virus or aren't currently carrying the virus. And today we're actually working on a plan to, in cooperation with the state, to test everybody that's in the facility on a regular basis before we release them from custody. So we've done really well in containing the virus and keeping it out of our facility by using these really simple methods. And it continues to work for us, and it's been really good for us.
Jim, can you give us any numbers, whether or not you had any cases among the inmates or among the guards or the security people involved in that regard?
Sure. We had one officer test positive. We've had several officers, including myself, excuse me, that were tested just because they were symptomatic, and those all came back negative. We had one inmate that did test positive. However, when working with the courts, we were able to release them from custody. Beyond that, we've not had any significant numbers of positive tests within the facility, and we've not had an outbreak to date.
Now, the actual test itself, I mean, it's evolved. It used to be, you know, you have the nose swab, and I think that's still the preferable one, but now we have the spit test, and there's some other ones going on. So it's going to make it a little bit easier to get for not only law enforcement, but others as well, to be able to test more promptly and get results back quicker.
Yes. You know, traditionally we've had that nose test. And if anybody has had the opportunity to have that, we all know that it's very uncomfortable. They're coming out now with a saliva test. They just collect saliva from within the mouth, put it in a tube, and we can send it back. And within 72 hours, we're told that we should be able to get a response back. So a lot less intrusive. I think more people are going to be willing to get that test. And it doesn't require a medical professional to be there. So jail staff can do it at night when there isn't any medical staff here, which is an added benefit.
Before we throw it back to Sheriff Baker, Lieutenant Miller, anything else about the jail that we need to touch upon? We touched mostly right now about the COVID-19 situation.
You know, not much else going on right now. You know, our numbers are down, our population is down, staff is doing well. We've got hopes for the future of some programs that'll help benefit the inmates. So all's going well. The jail is safe, the jail is secure and healthy.
And as I said to Sheriff Baker before, when this outbreak first came, I shudder to think what would have happened if this outbreak came when the facility was in downtown Allegan, in the old jail, and it's the current one. Ugh, shudder to think about that. Now, I do want to ask Sheriff Frank Baker to resume our Zoom conversation, and it's something I didn't have a chance to touch with you with Steve Kempker a lot on last Friday, but I do want to touch on it with you. We are heading towards the Labor Day holiday weekend, and the special law enforcement, which I believe with an emphasis on drunken driving nationally from the Office of Highway Safety Planning, is already underway. And of course, the Allegan County Sheriff's Department is involved with that.
Yeah, obviously holiday weekends are a busy time for us, and it's a busy time on the roadways. And unfortunately, obviously everybody is wanting to have a good time on the holidays, but some people have a little too good of a time, and they put themselves at danger as well as the rest of the motoring community. And we'll have deputies out on patrol, obviously looking for intoxicated and impaired drivers. I just noticed a disturbing statistic the other day. Looking at our overall traffic crashes in Michigan are down. And I attribute a lot of that to obviously the pandemic. When we were under all these shutdowns, people weren't traveling. They weren't going out to the restaurants and the bars. So traffic crashes were down. However, our fatal traffic crashes are up, and they're up higher than they were last year. So that's a disturbing trend, and we'll try to do our part to make sure our roadways are safe and to participate in initiatives like that. You drink, you drive, you lose, those types of situations where we'll have additional law enforcement staff watching for specific types of impaired driving.
Not only that, but also something that normally we focus on during the 4th of July weekend with Operation Dry Water. Drunken boating is also an enforcement goal, I would say, also during this Labor Day weekend.
You're exactly correct, Gary. Obviously, the Labor Day weekend is kind of the last big weekend of the year for boaters, and they will be out. Hopefully the weather cooperates for them. We want them to have a good time, enjoy our waterways, but we want them to do so safely. So that's a very good point, because we do anticipate a big boating weekend.
I don't want to put you on the spot, Frank Baker, but I do want to mention something. We got a comment when we had the chat with Sheriff Kempker in Ottawa County last week. Any interested person request a ride along with your local law enforcement agency and check into attending a Citizen Patrol Academy or other outreach training your local agency provides. It is very educational and eye-opening. I don't want to put you on the spot, Frank, but is there something along the lines in Allegan County, or maybe something that could possibly happen in Allegan County?
Yeah, we've been doing Citizen Police Academies periodically. This year was one of the years we were going to have a Citizens Police Academy, but unfortunately with the COVID-19 situation, we had to cancel that. So once we kind of get life back to normal here, we hope to be able to have another one in the very near future, and we encourage anyone interested in the happenings of the Allegan County Sheriff's Office, and they want to see law enforcement firsthand and get an idea of what it's really about, not just necessarily the TV version, but they want to get a sense of what really takes place. We really encourage them to contact us. Keep an eye on our Facebook page is probably the best way to see information regarding when that might occur. Right now, like I say, we do not have a date lined up, just because we hate to kind of put it out there, then realize that maybe we have to change it again. So it's something that we typically do not right in the summer months, just because usually people have vacation plans. Usually it's in the fall, but this year is just something we're not going to be able to do. But maybe hopefully in the spring.
Yeah, hopefully that will be one of the things we can talk about in a future conversation with Allegan County Sheriff Frank Baker. I want to thank you, Frank, along with Lieutenant Jim Miller, for joining us today on WHTC's Talk of the Town. We'll put the podcast on our website at WHTC.com. We'll also put the video recording with Frank and with Lieutenant Miller as a link on our Facebook page, on our webpage at WHTC.com in a little bit. Frank and Jim, thank you very much for joining us today. Wish both of you and everyone involved with the Sheriff's Department well.
Thank you, Gary.
Thank you. Have a great day.
Thank you very much. That is Allegan County Sheriff Frank Baker, along with Lieutenant Jim Miller on WHTC's Talk of the Town program.